Hi, and welcome to my next video on how to solve quadratics. Today we'll be using the vertex method to solve a quadratic. Now this is going to be two steps. The first step, I'm going to show you how to express a quadratic in its vertex form, and then using the vertex form we are going to solve the quadratic. And remember, usually when we solve a quadratic, we're looking for two answers. So let's get started. On the board, I have a quadratic. You know it's a quadratic because there's an x squared, an x, and something without an x. The first thing we have to do in any quadratic is identify the a, b, and the c. Remember, the number touching the x squared is a. So in today's question, a looks like 2. The number touching x, I don't see a number here right now, but whenever you don't see a number, it is automatically 1. Physically writing the 1. So b seems to be 1, sorry. And c is a number without x, so c is minus 15. Now, on the upper right hand corner, you will see the formula on how to express a quadratic in its vertex form. I just rewrote the formula here. Now, when you have to express a quadratic in its vertex form, your job is to find a, h, and k. Now, in different exams, they can use different letters. You don't have to put a here, you don't have to put h here, and you don't have to put k here. They could easily have said a, p, and q, a, l, and m. The point is, you need to find this item, the item in the brackets with the x, and the number outside the brackets. And these are the formulas here. Now, before we move any further, right, because we're going to bounce up one thing, I just want to clear it up one time. If I ask you how much is the square root of 49, most people would say, hey, the square root of 49 is 7. But that's not the full answer. Anytime you square root something, you get two answers. The answer for the square root of 49 is positive 7. And at the same point in time will be negative 7. So anytime you square root something from now on, don't put one answer. There will be a positive answer and there will be a negative answer. So we're going to bounce this up a little later in my explanation. So our job is to find a, h, and k. So let's get started. A is pretty easy. A is just the number touching x squared. So a is how much? 2. So we can just erase this a and put what in its place? 2. Let us go ahead and try to find h now. To find h, we just need to take the value of b. B is positive 1, so I'm going to write in my 1. 2 is part of the formula, and a is 2. So I'm going to erase the a and make sure I put it in brackets, otherwise it will look like 22. We do not want it to be 22. It's ready to multiply by 2. So the brackets are very important. Let's find k now. So a is 2. So I'm going to put multiply by 2 here. C is minus 15. So I'm going to put multiply by minus 15. Don't forget the minus sign. So when we're doing this, we'll have to use our calculator to multiply 4 by 2 by minus 15. B is 1. A is 2. So erase the a and put the a in brackets, otherwise it will look like 42. So all we have to do now is simplify this and simplify this. Well, this should be pretty much easy. 2 by 2 is 4. So 1 divided by 4 is a quarter. So h is a quarter. I will replace it in a little while. Let's work out this one. Now, when we're working this out, I'm going to work out the top on the calculator, write down my answer, work out the underneath, and then divide my answers. So let's work this out. 4 by 2 by negative 15. If you work this out, you'll get minus 120 minus 1 squared. Now 1 squared is 1, and a minus sign is waiting. So on top, we end up with minus 120 minus 1, which is minus 121. And 4 by 2 is 8. Well, I bet we can change that into a nice decimal. 121, or negative 121 divided by 8 is minus 15.125. Now, when we're expressing something, a quadratic, in vertex form, I strongly advise that you do not round off. You notice I have 3 decimal places. A lot of people would have rounded this off to 2 decimal places and put 0.13. However, with vertex form, I do not round off. If I get 4 decimal places, I put the 4 decimal places. Also, well, we can convert this to a decimal if you wish. 1 divided by 4, a quarter, is the same thing as 0.25. So, all we have to do now is replace h with that value and k with this value. So let me neaten this up a little bit. So, the h, I can erase the h, and instead of 0.25, instead of h, I can put 0.25, and instead of k, I can have minus 15.125. Now, if you look on the board here, you notice you have a positive and a negative. When a positive touches a negative, you will ultimately get a negative. So, throw away the positive and replace it with just 1 negative sign. And that's it. We have expressed the quadratic in vertex form. Right. Now, we haven't solved for the quadratic as yet. Remember, expressing the quadratic in vertex form is completely, well, I won't say completely different. It's just one step. It's a step before we actually solve the quadratic. So, the examiner might ask you to express it in vertex form, and then a separate question will be, using the vertex form, solve the quadratic. And I bet if we solve this quadratic, we will get 2 answers. So let me show you how to use this now to get your 2 answers. To solve the quadratic, make sure I always put it equal to 0. Remember in my previous videos, my couple of videos, I was always saying that if you're going to solve a quadratic, make sure it's equal to 0. What we're going to do, we're going to solve for x, which really means we're going to try to get x on one side and every other item on the other side. Now, there's a lot of items to throw across today. If we want x alone on this side, we need to get rid of the 2, the positive 0.25, we have a squared, and a negative 15.125. It can really get confusing on who to throw across first. So let me clear this up for you. The number outside the brackets, who's completely separate from everyone, we will throw them across first. So guess who is going to get thrown across first? The minus 15.125. Next on the list will be the item just touching the brackets on the outside. So who's touching the brackets? 2. So next on the list will be 2. Now keep in mind the 2 is a multiply, so when we eventually throw him across, we will get a divide. Next on the list is the square. We're going to throw across the squared third. And remember the rule is, when you throw across something, once it crosses the equal sign, it will become the opposite. And the opposite of a square is square root. And remember, I was a few moments ago, I was explaining that when you square root something, you don't get 1 answer, you get 2 answers. 2 answers, sorry. And last on the list will be the 0.25. The positive 0.25 will eventually turn to a negative 0.25. So let's clear this. Let's start this here now. We have the 2. x plus 0.25, and let's write it a little bit smaller because I need the space. Right. So we said we would throw him across first. When you throw across a negative, you will get a positive. Well, luckily I have a whiteboard, so I can erase that and make this into an equal sign. So when I throw across the negative, it becomes a positive. Who's next on the list? I believe we said the 2 will be thrown across next. The 2 is a secret multiply. Throw it across, we will get a divide. So this is no longer here because we threw it across. Let's divide this on the calculator. And the answer I get, I'm not going to round it off. If I get 4 decimal places, I'm going to use all 4 decimal places. So we have 15.125 divided by 2. Well, the answer doesn't look too pretty, but we are going to get, when you divide these two, we will get 7.565. I'm not rounding off. Who's next? Third on the list is the squared. So we're going to take this squared, throw it across, and the opposite of squared is a square root. So we no longer have the squared on this side. And well, this brackets here was to show that the whole thing is being squared. Since the squared is no longer here, we no longer need these brackets. So let's square root this. Now remember, I said when you square root something, you get how much answers? 2. One will be positive and the other one will automatically be negative. When we square root this, we get a really nice answer. We get x plus 0.25. When we square root this, we get positive 2.75. And its evil twin is minus 2.75. So now, don't forget the aim of the question. We're trying to solve for x. If we want to solve for x, we need to throw across the positive 0.25 and it will change to negative 0.25. So we grab him, throw him across, but we have 2 answers. To both answers, we will minus 0.25. If we work this out, we will get our first answer for the quadratic. And if we work the one underneath, we'll get our second answer. So we're almost finished. Our 2 answers, let's work this out. 2.75, normal positive 2.75 minus 0.25 will give me 2.5. That's my first answer. And my second answer will be negative 2.75 minus 0.25. I believe that will give me minus 3. And these are my 2 answers. I have solved the quadratic using the vertex form. Now it's very important to remember that if I try to solve this quadratic using factorization, or even if I try to use the quadratic formula, I will get these 2 answers as well. It doesn't matter which method you use to solve a quadratic, you're supposed to get the same answer. So let's try another question. Let's try another one. Let's solve another quadratic using the vertex method. Let's see if I can put some tricks in it for you. So let's try, oh, here's a nice one. We're going to solve this quadratic using the vertex method. Right? And if I'm going to solve the quadratic, I have to make sure it's equal to 0. All right. Now I think you all could probably identify the trick in this question. 1, I like my x squared to come first, my x's to come second, and my item without x to come third. So before I identify A, B, and C, I should probably rearrange this. I'm going to put the minus 2x squared first, then the minus 9x. And remember, this 5 is secretly positive, but I'm going to put it in here. So I've rearranged my quadratic. Now it's time to identify A, B, and C. A, B, and C. So let's express this in vertex form. Your job is to find A with some fancy colors. We have X. That's that one. Remember, we are supposed to find H and K. Well, we're supposed to find A, but A is very easy to find. A is just the number touching X squared. Remember, the formula to find H is B divided by 2A. And to find K, it's 4 multiplied by A multiplied by C minus B squared in brackets divided by 4A. So all we have to do now is just go and replace the letters with the relevant numbers. Anywhere we see a, replace it with -2. Anywhere we see a B, replace it with -9. Anywhere we see a C, replace it with 5. So let's get started with our substitution. This one is pretty easy. -2. B is -9 and A is -2. A is, erase A, we're supposed to put multiply by -2, and C, we're multiplying it by normal 5. B is -9, so I'm going to put the -9 in brackets. And A is -2. Now we have to be careful here. Whenever you square anything in the world, you will get a positive. Well, -9 squared will give me positive 81. And what do we have waiting outside according to the formula minus sign? So after you square this, you will get a positive, and a positive and a negative will give you back a negative. So in other words, always expect to get a negative in this area. So let's get started. Let's work this out. We have -2, open brackets, x. Well, if we were to work this out, we have -9 divided by -4. So 2 by -2 is -4. So if we divide by -4, we will get positive 2.25 squared. So we have h. This is h. Let's work this out. I'm going to work out the top and write down the answer, then work out the underneath and then divide. I'm not going to try to type in this whole mess here on my calculator. I'm going to do it piece by piece. Take my advice. Do it piece by piece. 4 by -2 multiplied by 5. When we work this out, we will get -40. When we work this out, remember I said -9 squared is positive 81. And what is waiting here? -9. So I will get -81. And 4 by -2 will give me -8. Let's work out the top. -40 minus 81 will give me -121. Divide by -8 will give me positive 15.125 today. So this is A, this is H, and this is K. We have expressed the quadratic in vertex form. Let's solve the quadratic now using the vertex form. So remember who we're going to throw across first, second, third, and fourth? First, second, third, fourth. So let's begin. Don't forget to put it equal to 0. So we're going to take the positive 15.125, throw it across, and we will get negative 15.125. Now, like I said, luckily I have a whiteboard. So when I throw it across, it will look like this. The positive changed to a negative, and my equal sign is here. Next in line is the -2. -2 is a secret multiply. Throw it across, you will get a divide, but notice the sign did not change. So he is gone. Let's divide this in our calculator. if we divide these two numbers, we will get positive 7.5625. Who's next on the list to throw across? Squared. Throw across the squared and you will get a square root. Let's square root this number. I think that we're getting the same answer as the last question. I assure you, it's pure coincidence. Right. So if we square root this, we will end up with x plus 2.25. And if we square root this, we will get positive 2.75. But when you square root, you also get its negative evil counterpart, negative one. So when you square root this, you get two answers. Aim is to solve for x now. So we throw across the positive 2.25 to get negative 2.25. But we also have to do the same thing for its negative counterpart. We just need to work this out, and we just need to work this out. And we'll get our two answers for the quadratic. So our two answers, let's work this out in our calculator. 2.75 minus 2.25 will give us 0.5. That's my first answer. Then we're going to work this one out. Right? And we got minus 5 for this one. Right. So that's it. We did two examples on how to express a quadratic and express a quadratic in its vertex form, and then using the vertex form solve the quadratic to get our two answers. All right. So I hope you enjoyed this video and you understood everything that went on in it. And once again, don't forget to check the website below for more details. And don't forget to subscribe and leave comments. Have a good night.